Welcome back to the Fictitious Dark, where we explore the lines between truth and the fictitious. And today, we're exploring the lines that are crossed in the acts of possession in the Evil Dead franchise. Many cultures associate gods and demons with specific emotions and sins, ranging from things that we're very familiar with, such as Thor, the god of thunder, or Poseidon and his association with the ocean. Or you have the Christianity belief of the devil. While he is associated with all forms of sin, emotion, different negative aspects, ultimately, he is the father of lies, the father of deceit. He uses the plethora of different negative emotions, sins, as a wheelhouse, a tool set to ultimately just lead you down the path of destruction, to deceive you and lie to you along your path to damnation. Now in the Evil Dead franchise, you have Deadites, who no arguing are demons associated with chaos and violence. Now, while they are agents of chaos and their goals are just to cause destruction, violence, and harm to any living thing, but if you would boil them down to just one thing that they're associated with, one emotion, one sin, I believe that to be trauma, specifically physical trauma. Obviously, in any depiction of a possession film, these are the most grotesque and violent forms of possession that you can come across in mainstream media. In every depiction of possession in the Evil Dead franchise, it is initiated through an act of physical trauma. One of the most recognizable things in the Evil Dead franchise is Ash and his chainsaw-wielding hand. He has to chop off his hand because the hand itself becomes possessed after it's bitten by an already possessed individual. His hand then turns on him, starts attacking him in a comedic fashion, but violent fashion. He then has to cut off his own hand, which he then replaces with a chainsaw. And then various other individuals, when possessed, usually starts with a cut, a hit, a bite, or a slash, and then it slowly turns into a form of possession. Those are more common and abundant ways that people become possessed in the Evil Dead franchise. Now, one of the most commonly known things about the Evil Dead, which is the most controversial, is the first possession to take place in the film is caused through an act of violence, but not your typical act of violence, a sexual act of violence. A sexual act of violence that is perpetuated by the vines of a tree, or in the most recent Evil Dead film, Evil Dead Rise, it is perpetuated by the wires in an elevator. The act of sexual violation that happens against the first victim of possession in any given Evil Dead film is something that has layers to it of meaning. For one, possession is an act of taking someone else's free will, controlling them against their will, and using it for your own, using their body for your own selfish needs and purposes. Quite frankly, the definition of possession has a lot of parallels to it, to the definition of sexual assault and what one will feel while enduring such an act. So in a way, possession itself is a commentary on the exact thing that a victim of sexual assault feels and goes through. And while you can use possession as a commentary on the forces at play, the emotions that one must feel when being a victim of such a depraved act, the next layer of connection between possession and the unwanted acts of sexual depravity is that of the emotional side of things and the emotional connection to demons. And there's the connection of your specific strong emotions creating demons or inviting demons, that they attach themselves to whatever abundant emotion you may have. If you have rage and it is uncontrollable, then a demon may manifest and maybe feed off your rage or assist you in committing acts of rage. The same is that of emotional trauma, that they attach themselves to the trauma. Purposeful splintered act into the victim's emotions. They want the victim to have the feelings of disgust and violation. They want to use it as an anchor point to embed themselves within the victim's body in order to perpetuate the possession. There are cultures that believe in various acts of torture, specifically sexual torture of one, that they are creating pathways and portals to other realms. Specifically, the act of sexual violence is the only thing strong enough to initially open the gates of possession. In each film, reading from the Necronomicon is simply an invitation to the demons and spirits to arrive at your door and enter your home. But the anchor point, the way that they are able to stay and manifest, is initially through a sexual act of violence. Through this sexual act of violence, that they open this pathway into one's soul and one's body. They break their spirit, they degrade them and make them feel less than human. You degrade them in order to assert your dominance, your power, your control, your possession of one's body. In almost every Evil Dead film, you see almost every main character become possessed at some point. Usually it is up to the strength of the character to fight the possession and overcome it, which Ash does many times. In every incarnation of Evil Dead media, the Deadites are needing to re-establish their anchor point for possession. Now, how they do this is violence against themselves, violence against their own body that they are possessing. You see various things from character chewing glass shortly after possession to the infamous Evil Dead 2013 remake where she's cutting her tongue in half. These are a re-establishment of an anchor point causing physical trauma. The trauma itself is what establishes the connection. Essentially the act of reopening the wound, the spiritual wound that was made, the gateway that was made through the initial act of possession. They are fighting back, hoping it does not heal itself and shut them out from their connection to this world from the spirit world. The only way they know how is through great emotions, great acts of physical violence. They need extreme measures to keep that connection alive, because if they were to simply be calm and not act in a horrendous manner and perpetuate the emotions at play and use their tool set, the spiritual wound could then eventually heal. And they need that to be open so that they can continually possess the individual. In different occult practices, it is known that sex has a spiritual quality to it, a transcendent quality that connects the physical and the spiritual realm together. So in reality, it does make sense that an act of unwilling and depraved sexual violence would be an invitation to something demonic and unclean and violent in nature. So while the Evil Dead franchise has a wide variety of its manner of approaching its subject matter in both comedic and over-the-top gory fashion, just know that there are elements at play which are rooted in deeper truths than you might think. So next time, maybe think twice before reading a book that is written in blood on pages that are made of skin, because you just might encounter something evil and dead. I just had to show off this Evil Dead little figurine thing that I got from a loot box years ago. It was just a random loot box, and this is a pretty cool little thing I got from it.